And I think what it was is I had like jumped to a new career, and that didn't make me happy. And I got more money, and that didn't make me happy. And then, my husband really wasn't making me happy, at least in the ways that I thought he should have, because I had, beliefs that were not accurate about what marriage was, and also God and myself. And so that numbness almost was like sin crouching at the door. I no longer knew which way to turn. I didn't know what was real, what wasn't. And then I just started to allow that thing to explore in my mind. And so for me, and I'm sure, babe, you're okay with us kind of exploring some of this, is for me, it was engaging in an affair. So I worked out of town, and, at first it was like just a regular old business lunch, nothing to even think about. But I didn't have my guard up, and that's the first step, right? He was crouching. God was warning me, just like he warned Cain, hey, watch out, something's about to happen. And so God never turned his back on me, but I turned my back on God. I chose the sin. And once you choose the sin, then the sin actually has you. Then you're in it. And so mine was about a 5-week affair, and I kind of started, opening my eyes to what it really was, more than just this physical thing, but then the emotional aspects were starting to come into play, and that became a very scary feeling. I still had not fully grasped what my sin was. I didn't know. I don't know how to describe that. You're like, well, of course you were in an affair, crazy lady. I mean, duh. You see what's going on? You see the destruction that's going to happen to your family, but when you're in it, you do not see it. Yeah. You all you can think about is yourself, and that is what sin is. It's selfishness. It's a self-centered life. And so you make choices based on what you want, or maybe even what's pulling at you, like money or jobs, that sort of thing. And so I realized that I had made a huge mistake, though the full realization, of course, had not come out yet. And I called probably 6 counselors, and most of them returned my calls back because I was hysterical on the phone. And 50% said to tell them, 50% said not to. And I knew in my spirit, I just knew that regardless of what I did, it was ultimately going to come out, and it was going to destroy our marriage. And so honesty is the best policy. And I felt that he deserved the right to make the choice on what he needed to do for his life, which could have been leaving me or could have been staying. I didn't really know. And so I chose to tell him.
Yeah. Yeah. Brett, how did that at the time, like, how did that unpack for you?
Oh,
man?
It didn't unpack well.
We love honesty.
It was not good.
No.
It was not good at all.
Yeah.
I always kid with our small group that if there was a Pride Olympics, I would be, the gold medal winner. It did not go well. I left immediately and filed for divorce 9 days later. And really only 9 days, because that's how long it took me to get my attorneys together to make sure that she wasn't going to get a nickel. Because money was everything and image was everything. And it was like, we're going to war. This is, how dare you do this to me? I mean, that it was, all I've done for you. I mean, you would do this to me kind of thing. Like, it was pretty bad. So I left that day, didn't come back, filed for divorce 9 days later, and we started down that process. Slander was probably the word to use, building up your story, making sure that I could position my image to bear it. I mean, a woman that has an affair on a man, I mean, men do it, but, this isn't right. Yeah. So that's where that moral legalistic thing came in. This isn't right. And so, of course, being the religious scholar I was, I opened the Bible and I point right to the Lord saying, adultery, cut it. Yeah. And so I took that scripture, and that was my rally cry right there. I was going to just stick my flag in the ground and go with it. And so it was not good. It was not good at all.
What brought you, first off, let me slow down. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, you know, we dropped this bomb on our marriage group. I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks in, and you should have seen their faces. I mean, you guys were prepared, so y'all know you're smiling and you're all the things, but they were like,
your story,
"Do I say anything?"
I love hearing it every time, and I'm just like, I love this. Like, I don't know. It's just, I love the redemption, like the fact that we're all sitting together, you know, and the fact that we met, like not too far after all of
11
this.
months.
Yeah.
From reconciliation.
I didn't realize it was that close. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the goodness of God.
Oh,
So
my
like every
goodness.
time you guys talk about it, it just like, it does something for me, you know? And I like, Erin, kind of going, hang on, you were about to say something.
Well, I was gonna ask how, because you responded the way you did. So what changed basically for you to basically start the process of the reconciliation? Because it's a beautiful story because we know how it ends,
Right.
Yeah.
but not everyone always
We win.
gets that, you know.
So how did we get to here? Well, we got to here first.
Well, what did you do?
Well, what did I do? I did nothing. I ran from the marriage. I did nothing. I ran from the marriage. I just...
We didn't speak, or he wouldn't speak with me. So when he filed for divorce, he didn't want to hear any of it. He had made up his mind. It was really always a red line for him.
But you did get yourself in with a counselor, so that says something.
So yeah, what ended up happening was Erin was pursuing heavily, and I thought I was great because when I would talk to her, I thought I was being kind, you know, for a man that had just been wronged the way that I felt that I had been wronged, and you know, quite honestly, I had been wronged. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I didn't want to do anything. And so some people said, hey, you're going to have to get some counseling. And I'm like, nah, I don't need counseling. I'm good. Yeah. You know, what you're really in is you're in shock. I mean, we were 11 years in our marriage. We were best friends. I think if you look through the windows, you know, an outsider looking in, you'd think, man, their marriage is good. Yeah. I mean, she was my best friend and all the things. So I was really hurt, obviously. But my pride was just destroyed. But ultimately, Erin kept pursuing. She kept pursuing and would ask me to do things, would ask me to go to counseling, and I wouldn't. And then I decided to go to a counselor, and he was really good for me.
What was the changing point that made you go see a counselor?
The changing point happened. So the changing point was in this time. At this point, I was doing everything I could to position myself for the judge when we were going to go into mediation, to look like the wrong spouse that had done everything he could to get back together. I mean, this is my psyche. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play the damsel. What would that be if you're the man, not the damsel? But I was going to play
the knight in distress.
The knight in distress. There you go. Thanks, Mark. I was going to play the knight in distress. Like I was wronged. My wife. I mean, you know, look what she did. You know, look at the empire of my work and business that I'd created. I need this. This is all mine. So if I go to counseling, it's going to make me look good. It's not going to make me look good in front of the judge. It's going to make me look good in front of all the other women and men that know us, that think, man, Brett's such a good guy.
Yeah.
You know, look at him.
He did the right thing.
He's such a stud. You know, that's ultimately what I wanted, is to be, you know, doted over. But Erin kept pursuing, and the Lord started working. Erin prayed me back into existence. Everybody said I was done. But I had I had rolled my sleeves up doing some things during that separation that was pulling me back from the marriage. So during the separation, I started having an affair from a bunch of weird situations that happened, but nevertheless, I found myself involved in a physical affair with a girl about a month after we had separated, without Erin knowing. But she just pursued like crazy, and the Lord started working. in our lives, and slowly started piecing things back together while I was still hiding at the time. So,
Man, babe, I know you said you had a question.
Well, yes, I do. But I kind of want to go to Erin and ask her, like, what was that pursuit for you like? Like, in your mind, what did you do? Like, I'm sure it was like, knowing you, I'm like, it's not a calculator. Like, oh, if I do this, like, I know that's not what it was. So when Brett is saying, like, Erin pursued me, what did that look from your end?
It's a good question. And I think people who go through affairs, you know, you're trying to knit together new neural pathways because your brain is, and your whole life has been upended. And so you ask all these swirling questions. And so I think this is a really pertinent one that you're asking, Juby, because people want to know what path can I follow to maybe get hope or to make my spouse engage. Some are probably saying even disengage. They want to know what are the things to point them towards the right path for whether that's staying in the marriage or getting out. I would say, you know, how traumatic it was with, you know, Brett just walking out of the house. I took my mom with me. I went to work for 2 days out of town. And when I came back, his stuff, everything was gone. Even all of our records for our home. I mean, anything. So there was just a total heartbreak. And then I couldn't speak with him. And so for me, I knew Brett. It was over. There was no second chances. You kind of have to measure up at that time, you know. And I also I knew what I did was even for my own self, right? I have to deal with my own shame and guilt of something that is I never thought I was capable of. So I really understood his pain, but I also knew my husband, and I was like, it is over. And I did. I mean, immediately when he told me, I was like, it's done. I mean, I told everybody it's over. My sister even tried to have a couple conversations with him, and she was like, I don't want you to have false hope, Erin. It's over. Because Brett is just so dogged when he kind of puts his mind on things. Also good on the flip side, though. But honestly, it was a close family friend who is a believer. And I'll say at this time, right, you're in and out of sin. You're not clear, and you're in shock. I can't say the Lord was with me. But was I following him? I was like surviving. But she stepped in and she prayed over me. But she said, you have to pursue. You have to fight. And I was like, but it's over. And she's like, and she, you know, going through her own marriage and struggles. She's like, you know, my husband had to come back to me and fight for me when I left the house, and he had to kind of prove himself. But then, you know, my heart softened and I'd come back in. So it started with, okay, I want to try, and I think you should always try, because right at the end of the day, if I hadn't have tried and the marriage ended, I would have said, well, why didn't I try harder? I mean, that would have just, you know, ripped my heart out even more. So I knew it was the right thing regardless of the outcome. So that's what really pushed me to say, I'm going to do this thing. And then I had to kind of be strategic. I couldn't love bomb him, because you really are. You want to get someone back, and so you have a tendency to be clingy.
Yeah.
And
Slow down. This is good.
Oh.
The clingy part.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that a little more. Why can that backfire? Because here's probably my hope. I'm sure there's someone that's listening to this or watching this, and rather they're the husband or the wife, they're probably thinking like, okay, how do I restore this? And that's a real thing to manage.
Thing.
You want to do the right thing, but too much. So talk about the clinginess for a little bit.
Yeah. Juby, you can jump in on this too. I mean, you've seen it in a lot of couples. When even if there's nothing, you know, big and egregious like an affair, or sometimes spouses just get to the point that they're done. And when one person says, okay, hey, I still want to fight, and the other person's just checked out, you have more power and control than you think in terms of changing the outcome. But you cannot change the person. And so if you have to think of it from their perspective, you put yourself in their shoes. They are repulsed by you.
Yeah.
You have to call it what it is.
Fact.
You have done this thing.
The peanut gallery over here.
I mean, that one's a pretty clear one, but whatever it is, like you haven't helped with the kids in 20 years, you've done nothing. Whatever it is, it's like your thorn in your side that you just feel like your spouse has not done. I mean, we all cling to those things. And so by applying more pressure, begging, you show a neediness, and that person already is like, I'm on the fence with you.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you actually create more disgust from the other partner, and it's harder to ingratiate yourself. And I think the thing is anything we hold on to tightly slips through our fingers like sand.
Yeah.
For us, because we believe in Christ, believing that God is going to work all things for good allows you to let go of some of that control and say, okay, I'm going to do what's best for them. I'm nervous and scared right now. I do not want my husband to walk out and leave. But instead of chasing him down, I'm going to give him the space and believe that God is going to return him in the right time. And patience and waiting is not passive. People forget that.
Yeah.
It's active.
Yeah.
It is of course it's praying and seeking the Lord, but it's also being strategic in your timing. Like, okay, I know Brett doesn't have to work on Fridays, and so he's going to be happier. He's going to have more time. He'll probably be more rested. So if I'm going to approach my spouse, that's when I'm going to do it. If I'm going to maybe have a conversation or invite him for that coffee. Don't do it at 10 o'clock on a Monday night when someone's trying to go to bed or they're exhausted, or 7 p.m. when you're trying to feed the kids.
Yeah.
So you're even paying attention and being mindful. What I'm hearing is you're mindful to the point of basically the word I would use is energy management.
Oh, yes.
You're paying attention to not just the day of the week. You're paying attention to the time of the day. Oh. So what you're essentially saying is you are so detail oriented on recognizing when is he going to be most receptive.
Mm-hmm. Be a student of your spouse.
That's so good.
Yeah. That's good.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
Okay, so you're managing the tension of to not be clingy, giving him his space. Brett, you've now had your affair at this point. What was your turning point then to kind of start working these things out?
Well, I was in my affair.
Okay.
My affair was actually longer than Erin's, about 5 months. Maybe not quite that long, but close. Maybe 5 months with the emotional side. Mm-hmm. So I was still in my affair, and loved being pursued. Loved Erin, obviously. I mean, I loved Erin, but there's no way that I could get back with her. That was not going to happen. I couldn't live with myself. I mean, everyone that I ever grew up with, would laugh at me, tell me I'm weak, tell me I'm married to, whatever. And there's no way I was going to deal with that. It's just, that wasn't going to happen. So I could build my image back by being with another woman and moving on quick and keeping my money like I thought it was, like the fruits of my labor. And so I just got into this weird, like, it was just all a pride. I mean, talk about Proverbs saying, what is it? Pride leads to destruction, a haughty spirit to the fall. Mm-hmm. That was me, and I was rapidly approaching it. So I was basically throwing all my old ways prior to being married back to the forefront. So, maybe a womanizer, using other people to build my image up, just a user, just not a nice person. And so as Erin pursued me, the Lord started to work. I mean, I say all the time, she prayed me back into existence. We would go somewhere and she'd be kind, or she would, she'd send me text messages and I would just blast her. I remember one time putting I could climb Mount Everest barefoot, walking backwards easier than I could to get back with you. And she was just so kind.
I was on the Stairmaster and I was like, I will get a good response.
I mean, I remember I was having breakfast with a coworker in Monterey, California, and I'm like, look at this. I mean, she's crazy. Could you ever get back with this? Like, kind of thing. But the Lord started slowly working, softening my heart. Again, I was still listening to praise and worship, like being the Christian that I thought I was supposed to be, but my heart was so hard, and I didn't realize. It's like the Lord always talks about the Pharisees, and the outside of the cup is clean, but the inside's dirty. I mean, that scripture means so much to me because that was me. Like, I did not recognize my own hardness of heart. And it was before even the affair. I mean, I was a know-it-all. I thought my way was the best way. I didn't protect my wife and all these things. And so I was still going down this path, but the Lord was softening me. And she had asked me to go to the marriage conference at Gateway. And so again, I was still in the affair at this time. But I thought, okay, we're getting close to mediation.
One week.
Yeah, 1 week away from
1
mediation.
week.
That's amazing that you even said
I didn't
yes.
know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were 1 week away from mediation, and I'm like, okay, I'll go.
As a last favor.
Yeah, basically. And so I remember the opening, Thursday night, it started, and it was not good. Like, we were standing next to each other. I couldn't even get into praise and worship. I was standing next to basically,
He actually.
I was not happy with who I was standing next to.
I think he said
where's this going?
He said it would have been better if you had died. It would have been easier.
I think if you really research affairs and stuff, like, death is easier to deal with than the trauma of an affair. It's a traumatic experience. I mean, it just really is. I don't know how else to explain it, but they say that death is easier to deal with
Because it feels probably more final.
Correct.
Yeah.
You don't know. You're in a traumatic, state of mind. But anyways, we went to the marriage conference, and as you guys know, on Friday we had our session, and we went to lunch. And I remember negotiating with the Lord. I'm not telling her. There's no reason for me to tell her, because I only did it because of her. She's never going to find out, because my affair partner was in California. She's never going to find out. It's clean slate. Nobody knows. I'm good.
Yeah.
And so we were driving, and I was negotiating this the whole way, and we got into the next session. We were in there, and it was Montel Jordan and his wife were speaking, and went through the session and basically said, if there's anything inside, and you said something earlier, Mark, that kind of summed it up, but basically,
If you're the only one that knows your secrets, you're in trouble.
right.
Yeah.
And how marriages with secrets just can't last.
Yeah.
It's just gonna self-destruct your marriage. And so he said, if you have anything that you want to tell your spouse after the session, I encourage you to do so. So I'm still sitting there saying, no way, Lord. And at this point, Erin had never, we're end of October. So this happened in May. I left in May 17th. We're in October, end of October. And she had never asked me. Never asked me what I was doing. Only pursued me. Never asked me, are you doing something? Have you done something? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll be darned, she looked over at me and she said, hey, I never asked you, is there anything in our marriage that you have been hiding that you would like to share? And I remember just looking down at the stage, and I felt the clock ticking in my head, and it got to be a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought, uh-oh. And I told her. And she obviously was really hurt, but she took it on the chin, and she said, I'm sorry. I forgive you. You only did this because of me, and I want to work on our marriage. And it was at that point that the light came back. It's like the Lord brought me out of the darkness into the light. And that was the moment that we recommitted to work on our marriage. Not back together. I was still living in an apartment.
Yeah.
But that was a time that the Lord just started working even more. Like it was like in fifth gear now. We're rolling. And we started to rebuild.
If you like this, hit the like button, follow, subscribe. If you want to watch full episodes of our stuff, click here. If you want to check out more clips, click here. Or you don't have to do any of that. And I'm just thankful for the gift of your time. Have a wonderful day. Peace out.